Welcome everybody. My case study I've chosen to do is a Sinclair C5 electric car failure, which fell over within 12 months of its launch in 1985. My name is Shahan Silva, student number 2400030, and I'll take you through my agenda now. So the agenda will be an introduction of the case study, and then after that will be a C5 brief history. Moving on from that is the electric car background from 1985 to 2020. We'll have a look at the commercial that was released in 1985 when the car was released. Then from that, two industry definitions, broad and narrow definitions. Then from there, we'll use the marketing position used by Clive Sinclair and a table to outline the position that perhaps they should have used. Then we'll look at an external analysis using PEST. Moving on from that, I'll have three recommendations that the Sinclair brand perhaps should have used back in 1985. And after that, we'll have a Q&A or a discussion where you can write comments on the YouTube link and or in the Canvas discussion board, and just a quick reference page as well. All right, let's get into the introduction. So again, my case study is on a failed Sinclair C5 electric car. The product was released in 1985 in the UK as a cheaper alternative for a motor vehicle. The primary reason for the downfall at a rapid rate was poor marketing strategy and positioning. I will discuss further in the case study why this is so with the industry definition, but as you can see to the pictures on the right, it failed to meet basic car requirements. And one of the things that the BBC lashed it on was the fact that it didn't have a roof. And just like Melbourne, the UK's weather is pretty unpredictable, so that was a big factor. Moving on to a brief history of the C5. Clive Sinclair was a talented businessman and entrepreneur and made it really big in 1982 with IT-related products. And 3 years later, he dipped his hand at the electric car market. But unfortunately for him, it failed within 12 months of opening. In 1985, the product itself opened up at £399. The distribution methods they used were through electric shops. The promotion was quite large, and on the next slide I'll show you the 1985 commercial that they used upon releasing it. So it had national coverage. The target market was perhaps the key factor, along with the positioning, that they marketed it to housewives, commuters and kids. Even though the product did fail within 12 months, it actually sold 17,000 units. And the company that bought it off Clive when it failed sold all the remaining units within 2 to 3 weeks at almost £800 each, because he cleverly repositioned it as a fun single-seat recreational mode of transport rather than an actual electric motor vehicle. So moving on to the electric car background. Obviously in 1985 the Sinclair C5 was released, and there wasn't really any competitors or any other manufacturers trying to do anything at the time because the technology just wasn't around. And it wasn't until 1997 when Toyota unveiled its Prius, which then went into production in the year 2000. From then, in 2010, Tesla came into the market and is currently going really strong along with the Prius. And the electric car market, which was recently tipped to reach $1.3 trillion by the year 2025, which is quite a significant segment now. Moving on to the commercial that was released in 1985. I'll play it and you guys watch and we'll discuss after.
Imagine a vehicle that can drive you 5 miles for a penny. A vehicle that needs no petrol, just a battery. And that takes the press of a button to start, the squeeze of a lever to stop. That needs no license, no road tax, and you can drive whether you're 14 or 40. A vehicle that costs just £399. The Sinclair C5. It's a new power in personal transport. The Sinclair C5, £399. Want to buy one? Want to see one? Or simply want to read all about it? Just dial 100 and ask for free phone C5 now.
So you can see even in the advertisement, they still describe it as a vehicle trying to push in the automotive industry, which was positioned completely wrongly. Moving on to industry definitions, we've got broad marketing in the automotive vehicle industry and narrow or niche marketing in the personal transport EV cars industry. And this is where Clive Sinclair and his marketing team got it wrong. We'll start off with broad marketing in the automotive vehicle industry, which they use. Now, the automotive industry comprises a wide range of companies and organisations involved in the design, development, manufacturing, marketing and selling of motor vehicles. It is one of the world's largest economic sectors by revenue. The automotive industry does not include industries dedicated to the maintenance of automobiles following delivery to the end user, such as automobile repair shops and motor fueling filling stations. Now, with the narrow marketing personal transport EV cars industry, which is more of a niche market, which they should have used, is defined as a personal transporter, also electric, rideable, personal light electric vehicle, personal mobility device, etc. Is a class of compact, mostly recent 21st century motorised vehicle for transporting an individual at speeds that do not normally exceed 25 km per hour. They include electric skateboards, kick scooters, self-balancing unicycles and segways, as well as gasoline-fueled motorised scooters or skateboards, typically using two-stroke engines of less than 49cc displacement. Many of the newer versions use recent advances in vehicle battery and motor control technologies, mainly electric. And this is the market that Clive Sinclair and his marketing team should have used when they're defining their market. Unfortunately, they positioned themselves in the automotive vehicle industry, and the table on the next slide will show you where they got that one wrong. That was the determining factor why they failed within 12 months. Instead of positioning it as a fun utility vehicle that was battery powered for leisurely use, they actually positioned it in the motor vehicle industry under an electric car, which did not meet the requirements and which it isn't. And you can see that in the tree diagram above. If you follow that, that's where they positioned themselves in, and red denoting that that was the incorrect positioning to place themselves in. And the gentleman that bought it 12 months later and sold the vehicles for £799 within 2 weeks actually repositioned it in this area here, and I think that was the determining factor why they failed, and he succeeded within only 2 weeks. On to the external analysis. In 1985, if they were to do an external analysis, which was a political, economic, social and technological, they would have seen that there was no pressure or economic pressures at all at the time to release an alternative vehicle instead of an internal combustion engine. And same with the social awareness. Even though the social awareness was existent for the environment, there wasn't huge platforms like in social media like we have today to actually push the point a bit further, so governments and manufacturers took notice of that. And technology-wise, there wasn't actually any lithium batteries around that could suffice the need to be able to travel long distances, especially in countries where you'd have to be able to move larger distances. When you look at the year 2000 up until 2020, currently the political and economic sort of awareness is much larger. So governments do want to give people greener options, and the economic factor that it's only 1/3 to run an electric car compared to an internal combustion motor vehicle is quite a selling point, not just for the people but for manufacturers to get behind it. The social need with the social platforms, the awareness of the carbon footprint, and the awareness to try and reduce that carbon footprint is changing marketing demands. So again, manufacturers got behind it, and the technology these days with the lithium battery is probably the determining factor why the Prius and even Tesla currently are so successful. Unfortunately, Clive Sinclair was just bought his product out at the wrong time, and not only because of that, but perhaps if he had positioned it in a different space in regards to personal transport as a fun utility vehicle, he probably would have been able to sell it rather than try to marketed as a car, which it wasn't, and the time and the technology just wasn't there. So, recommendations. With the recommendations, if you were to move back into 1985 and I could recommend something to Clive Sinclair and his marketing team, it would basically to use a pest when analysing the external factors. As the previous slide demonstrated, if they were to have a look at the political, economic, social and technological factors at the time, they would have seen that a lot of those things were against them in regards to releasing a product such like that at the time, and a lot of money and a lot of pain could have been saved for Clive and his team. Another one is an accurate marketing strategy and narrow positioning on launch. So instead of using a broad range to define the industry, they should have used a niche, because that's basically what that was. It was more like a moped rather than a motor vehicle, and it was just positioned completely wrong. And perhaps, well, not perhaps, if you look at the gentleman that bought the product, 12 months later, he sold it within 2 to 3 weeks, so he proved that point. And the final recommendation would be the timing. The timing was just all wrong. 1985, there was no technology, there was no social, political or economic real reason to try and come up with an alternative for an internal combustion engine. So I think the timing could have been better by Clive if he perhaps postponed his aspirations by 5 years or so. I think he would have been a lot more successful with better positioning as well. Now, moving on to the Q&A section, feel free to write down any questions on the Canvas discussion forum or even on the YouTube link in the comments below. It was an interesting topic to do the case study on, and I've got no issues having any discussions with any of my peers. And the final page, just the references. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to it. I appreciate it. Thank you.